Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another session in the kitchen. Tonight, we are so lucky to be joined by my good friend, Alan Jaeger. Alan is one of the people that I would say, well, Rocky introduced me to Alan because Rocky actually learned from Alan early on. So, Alan's been doing this for a while. No joke on Rocky or Alan's age, just that's how long he's been in this business. He's written several books, has DVDs out. So he is an authority. So tonight I feel really privileged to have him on the call tonight. We're gonna talk about meditation and how you can use it in your daily life. Obviously, I'm gonna apply it to sports and do some other stuff, but why don't we just take a second, let some people join and introduce you to my good friend, Alan Jaeger.
Well, if that's an opening for me, if not, I'll take it anyway, because I want to get a chance to say thank you. And I appreciate what you do. And as you know, we've had some great talks with Rocky, and I just love the authenticity of, where you come from and how genuine you are about all of this. And also, I think what we both try to do is make this user friendly. And so I'm excited. I'm even repping my my Team Mustard sweatshirt, and I'm excited because we've talked about this before. Any chance we get a chance to share some of these ideas about things that are ultimately really leading to mental health, mental well-being, obviously for people in sports, performance. So yeah, I'm looking forward to wherever this takes us, buddy.
Why don't you give a little history of people that don't know you, like talk about a couple of the books and what you do business-wise while we still have people joining the call.
Yeah, so I was a pitcher at Cal State Northridge in 1986, which now feels like 1996. And yeah, I went through a really challenging time, and I had no idea what it was, but it was all mental, and it essentially, well, I could say it essentially ended my career, but I had to leave the team. And at the time, obviously, it was devastating because, I did feel like it essentially ended my career. But as we all know, those are those gifts that we get in life. It was a profound teaching moment. And it got me to really dig deeper into like what happened and what's going on. I had no background, so to speak, in psychology, philosophy, meditation, other than knowing a little bit about my parents were doing some transcendental meditation. But yeah, I switched my major to psychology. I was sort of on a mission to kind of find out like what happened. And it was through my undergrad when I got my psychology degree. In one of my upper division courses, our professor, who was a teaching therapist, but had a huge Eastern philosophical bend. And long story short is he told this story that was in a book called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And so I started studying Zen, and I fell into Alan Watts, and Alan Watts's book, The Way of Zen, really, really changed my life. And so I got heavy into Zen, heavy into Taoism, heavy into yoga at some, along the way. And so I was a pitching coach after doing my college deal. And but all along I was researching and reading and writing and meditating a lot. And for over about a 4-year period, I was just dedicated to doing nothing but that and coaching. And my book came out of that, Getting Focused, Staying Focused. And I'd say that really was the key. I mean, yes, I went on and continued to do things on the physical side with throwing and arm development and being a pitching coach. But I really love the fact that the mental side of it, and the spiritual side, and the holistic side. And so long story short is that's sort of how it all started. And that's been 33 years now. And I feel it's cool because, as you know, when we both started, this was really out there. And this was something that I think people almost backed off from, thinking like if they talked to you, they had to have a problem. And as you know, we've always come from the point of view of like, no, 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 this is about enhancement and development. Sure, you may have to deal with problems and issues too, but like anything else you do in life, you're trying to enhance development, enhance skill development. And so, of course, you already know this, that, you know, a huge piece of mental training is to just develop your skills and develop and look at life in a way and sports in a way that can be really beneficial. And so fortunately, it feels like this massive shift to where in the 90s, for sure, it was like you had 7 eyes on your forehead, and now it's just amazing where there's apps. It's just so mainstream. There's still a ways to go, which is tonight's topic. I feel like the mental part of the game, the management of the game, and golf, as you know, it's course management. But I feel like that's getting really most of the attention, when I feel like we're the real core of this is the practice. And so that's why I love talking about mental practice and meditation. So hopefully that didn't take too long to give you the story.
No, I think that's great. It's always, I think, so important to have a little bit of background so people out there that aren't familiar with you and your work get to know you better. So tonight, I know we're going to talk about how to meditate, right? That's the topic we both love. And then meditation and how you use it in your training. And then we'll have some Q&A at the end. But, you know, what you were just saying about having a daily practice and how important it is, because I agree with you. It seems like the majority of the clients that I get are people that have already like created some kind of mental hurdle, right? So they're coming because, you know, something's not working right. And you and I both know, you know, of course, you know, we do the best we can to help them out. But, you know, what we're trying to get people to understand is if you start to meditate or have a mindfulness practice, you are going to be enhancing your performance. And I know that it's a lot of people look at it as, oh, it's just something else that I need to do every day. But the benefit of it far outweighs the amount of time you invest in it. So, you know, I know I'm speaking to the choir, you know, in your regards, you know, to us talking about this, but how do you feel like we get past that? How do we convince the people that are maybe tuning into this call that don't have a regular practice to give it a shot? I mean, I know in a second you're gonna start us off with a guided meditation, but like, what would be the paragraph of why you think somebody who doesn't have a practice should literally start this evening and then continue with it, you know, like you and I do every day for the rest of our lives, hopefully?
Well, first of all, it's a brilliant question, and it's a perfect setup for the rest of the talk today, because I think coming out of the 90s and dealing with the type of, let's call it, resistance that I had to deal with, and I'm not blaming anybody. I think it's just a lack of education. It's not like it's anybody's fault that they were resistant to it. It was new, and change can be very difficult. And as you know, also, it's very intangible at first, not after I think the practice starts to happen, but I think at first people are like, well, I can see my my Rapsodo with a curveball, but you know, where's the measurement? Well, I shouldn't say that, because nowadays with breathing and all sorts of, you know, research, they can actually do plenty of physiological benefits, which I know you'll get into. But the short answer is this, Jason, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of both of us, that I always try to keep it so simple and just say, look, if you knew you would be 50% more relaxed at the plate, or 75% quieter at the free throw line, right? Or 90% more trusting your instincts behind an 8-foot putt. I said, would that be a reason alone to start doing a new practice? And I don't think I've ever met anybody yet that wouldn't say, I want to be more relaxed. I want to be more clear-minded. I want to be less stressed. I want to be more present. I want to be less distracted by my thoughts or whatever. And so then I follow that up with, so I try to keep it simple up front and use like, it's like math, I just try to make it 1 + 1 is 2. So there's no gray area. I'm like, well, if you like to improve on those are all skills, by the way, we both know. I said, well, if you get better at anything in life, ground balls, fly balls, whatever, go to the range, right? You're developing your skills. So I try to keep it in those terms, which I feel like is really user friendly. And I feel like people can grasp that and go, oh, I get it. So I'm really just developing skills. I didn't think of relaxation as being a skill. I didn't think of having a quieter mind, as important as that is. I didn't think about that being a skill I can work on. So that is A, where I come from, I guess. And I would just say quickly with B is that once they kind of get that, then you use the same metaphor you use, which is if you're going to do anything every day to get better at something. I mean, if you're going to drink water to stay alive, I go, if your mind is the engine of the car, it would make sense that you'd want to do something every day to make sure your engine is as clean and running as efficiently and smoothly as possible. So as you know, I also talk about that this is just a way of life. And the last thing I'll say is this: if you look at the research of how many thoughts that we take on every day based on technology, based on the cell phone, based on social media, things that weren't happening probably 100 years ago, then if nothing else, just start with knowing mental practice and meditation is just a huge piece of life now, just to neutralize, just to start off by saying, hey, I'm taking on a lot of stuff. I need to dump maybe a lot of stuff. I need to release a lot of stuff. So we can first talk about it even just to sort of stay up with how the brain has changed so much in the last 20, 30 years. But I'm with you, I just feel like it's just such a way of life now that the idea of me going out in the world and not having a meditation practice, I just feel very vulnerable. I feel very vulnerable to old patterns and old stuff that maybe was very distracting to me. And I just feel like that I want to, change the neuroplasticity of the brain. I really want to get to a place where my default is pulling me more toward being relaxed, being clear, being quiet, being present. And it just makes sense that without having a practice, unless you're born that way, I guess, and it's in your DNA, but I just think most human beings, we just take on so much. And so I would say those are some of the general pieces that I try to bring out up front without guilting anybody into doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So why don't we start? I know you do this meditation that you like to do in the beginning. So why don't you start and just have everybody get quiet for a second, then we can talk about some more stuff after you do it.
I'm sorry.
No, that was it. I'm just queuing you up to go ahead, and why don't we just do a quick 3 or 4 minute.
Okay, great. And again, everybody feel comfortable knowing they can go back and rewatch this. So you don't have to remember everything right now, but I'm gonna give everybody a couple of simple checkpoints to essentially get present, to essentially get quiet, and hopefully to get relaxed. And I get this idea of arriving where we all are right now from Peter Russell, and you can find him online, but he's an amazing teacher. So a couple of checkpoints is number one, I always like to, and I'm sure you do too, I always like to get people into their body, because their body is always happening in the present moment, right? The thoughts are what tends to take you in the past or future. And I feel like the body can just immediately help you to start getting present again, because the body's always here. So the first thing we'll do, and then we'll do it, is I'm going to have everybody kind of get into the body. Then we'll just maybe count to 10 in a very brief breathing exercise, and then we'll leave a minute for just space where people can just sort of experiment and do whatever they want to do. Okay, so those are like the 3 parts: get present, get to the breath, and then let's just have some quiet. Okay, so the first thing I want everybody to do that's listening is you don't have to, and if you're driving, obviously don't, but if you're sitting somewhere stationary or laying down, just close your eyes and just start to become aware of where you are. And one of the greatest ways to become aware of where you are and to be present, again, is just to start tuning into the body. And one way I love to tune into the body is I like to bring my awareness to that which is holding my body in place. And what I mean by that is whether it's a bed or the ground or a chair, there is something physically supporting you that's holding you in place. So rather than thinking about, I have to relax and I have to let go, try doing the opposite. Try saying, oh, I'm going to let that which is holding me in place support me and do the work. So now you don't have to do anything. You're just literally like a puppet on string, or you're like a leaf in the wind. You're just really floating because you're allowing that which is solid to do the work. So I'm going to be quiet here for about 10 or 15 seconds, and I'd like everybody to just try that first. Try to really just let the body be supported by whatever is physically supporting you. And you may notice that when you do that, there's an immediate feeling of lightness or heaviness. So take 10 or 15 seconds and just play with that. Allow that which is supporting me to do all the work. Now, the next thing I'd like you to do is just gently start to bring your awareness to your breathing. And I just want you to notice and even be curious what your breathing is doing. So notice the inhale. You may notice that it's short or long or smooth. Whatever it's doing is perfect. So just sort of notice what the inhale is doing. And then notice what the exhale is doing. But the key is not to try to influence it. So it's just to let the breath create its own pace. It's like you're sitting on a horse out in the wilderness, and you're literally letting the horse take you for a ride. So the horse is in charge. And so what I'd like you to do now with the breath is just let the breath be the horse. And again, you don't have to try to influence it or do anything, but just watch it and observe it and let it take you for a ride. And for this last part now, you can either continue to just let the breath take you for this nice ride, or you can just allow yourself to feel whatever's happening, meaning if you're feeling nice and relaxed, you're starting to loosen up. Maybe the mind is starting to slow down. But if you're starting to feel comfortable and you really don't want to do anything because we do so much throughout the day, then just kick your feet up, take a load off, and just literally chill out. And you don't have to do anything. And at this point, if you notice any thoughts that may be coming into the mind, this is a great time to practice what's called being neutral. So if a thought comes in, it's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad. Just allow it to be there. And just keep coming back to either the breath or letting go or chilling out. Something that's not a thought. And if another thought kicks in, no problem, just allow it to be there. It's not right or wrong. Just be neutral, just let it be there. You don't have to take the dance with a thought. And just redirect your attention back to the breath or back to letting go or back to chilling out. And I'm just going to give you about 30 more seconds without saying a word now to just enjoy your practice. And when you hear the bells, you'll know that we're making our way out. Just a reminder when there's silence, how meaningful, gratifying, and healthy. What a concept, how healthy silence is.
It's just, I think whenever I finish with any kind of meditation practice, I think what you just said really wraps it up, right? Like, life is so busy all the time, and that we just, like, I don't even want to say we take silence for granted. I think in most people's lives, there's so little of it that even goes noticed at all.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is, I just think there may not be an awareness of the value. Of course, there's silence. It's like, if you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like if people knew, which is, of course, a huge reason we're doing this tonight, that if people knew the value and the deep, deep meaning of silence and the benefits of it, it would not be a tough sell. It would be something that people would want to do. It would not be a chore, as you mentioned earlier, that's something more you have to do. And before I forget, if people also understood that, because I did a talk a few months ago, and I've never said this before, and at the end of the talk, I said, this sort of all comes down to, and I'm being a tiny bit facetious, but sort of not really, but this sort of all comes down to being quiet when you're out there performing. And of course, when I mean performing, we're talking about life. And because really, if your mind is really, really quiet, well, to me, that means you're really, really free. You're really, really instinctive, intuitive, natural, organic. So for an athlete in sports, that means your athleticism is free to pour out. And so, in fact, we put a tweet up a lot: quiet mind equals best game ever. And I would say, theoretically, you could say quiet mind equals best life ever. It's, so yes, I just wanted to jump on that point too, about the value, the deep value of silence.
Yeah, way underappreciated. And I think leading up to that guided meditation that you did so well, so thank you for that, it's a skill, right? Like, it's our natural state, but we're so removed from it that now we have to develop a skill to get back to it, right? It's absolutely incredible. But my hope is that people that are tuning into this, we can convince you of what Alan just said, right? Like, if you're externally aware and you're involved in the environment and you're being athletic, you're playing the game. If you're in your head, you are internally focused and you are thinking about how to play the game. And thinking about how to play the game is not playing the game. So that's why the two of us are on this call. And I don't want to make it seem like we're pleading with you, but we're, we want to do anything we can to inspire you to just give this a try. And in that moment of silence that we just had at the end of that guided meditation was exactly what we want everybody to feel, because we both know that if you give this a chance, you will have more and more of those moments each and every day. And then the beautiful thing is you'll know the difference between when that's happening and when it's not happening. And then the evolution of that will be, then you'll understand, hey, I'm in my head and I should be playing this game right now. And then you'll have a tool, because you've been working on this skill, to be able to catch yourself in that moment and let go and actually start playing again. And that's why we're here. So hopefully we are convincing you that this is something worth doing. And if you can make it part of your daily practice now, hopefully you won't ever have the kind of problems that come along with when you get stuck, because you've created this problem that you can't solve with the same mind that created it, right? Like you get caught up in trying to do this thing, and your mind has no idea how to play the game in the first place. So you get in this struggle that you can't get out of. So again, we're here because we want you to start a practice, and however small you start. Like, what did that meditation take? 3 or 4 minutes? Like even if you just started with a minute or two, and all you did was a body scan or aware of your breath, or it's a beginning. And if you can start small like that and just start making it part of a daily practice, I think it'll grow organically on its own.
Yeah, and I would just add to, for those that are listening, the reason we're both so passionate about this and bordering on desperate, just joking, but the reason we're pleading with people is because we've touched that place very, very deeply. It's a way of, it's not part of our life. I mean, I guess it is a part of our life. It's really more of a way of life. And as an example, I was thinking about when we had that silence. Normally, I would have never said anything. I would have been quiet. I would have waited for you to say something. But I think if this might be hard for people to really understand, but because we have such a diligent practice in place, that 3 or 4 minutes for us took us both to a very, very deep place that we were able to connect to fast. And we wanted to stay in a quiet place because it felt so good and so right, and freed us up to just be intuitive and instinctive and all that. And the last thing I'll say is, based on what you said too, is that one of my favorite lines I got from Dr. Shana Shapiro, who's a world-renowned teacher in mindfulness. She's up at Santa Clara University, and I've done a number of retreats with her, and she always says, you become what you practice. And if you want to be more in tune with anything in life that makes you feel better, it would make sense that you would not practice it once a month, but practice it every day. And I love what you said. I've never thought of that before, about how the brain that got you into the problem, if you're using the same brain, that could be very, very tricky. And one of the beautiful things about meditation is it takes you out of the brain to this neutral place where now you're tapping into a new way of looking at the situation, at life. And so thank you, because that's the beauty of life. Like, we're always learning. And like, that was a very profound statement, because I don't think people realize that if you have a problem and you don't have any training with stepping back from that and entering a quiet space or a meditative space, just to be aware of that. Yeah, it might be, you might continue, that's probably why there's a word slump. A slump to me is just someone who is repeating the same pattern that their brain is defaulting to, and they're thinking the same way over and over again, and they don't have the contrast, and they maybe don't have the awareness that there is a different way to look at things. And so again, for everybody out there, that's why we keep bringing this up, because we've lived this, and we've also seen the effect it's had on countless people we've worked with. And we're just trying to get you to tap into this as soon as possible in your life.
So, we kind of talked a little bit about meditation and how you apply it, like in your daily life. Do you have a time for people that this might be their introduction to meditation or mindfulness? Is there a certain time of day that you would say is a better time to start? And just maybe give us, just a schedule of, if you were talking to somebody that had never done it before, what would be your advice as to how they should go about it?
Well, we would both probably say, for starters, anytime, please, unless you're operating heavy machinery or a car, but anytime would be just key. And in fact, maybe I'll touch on this at some point too, but there's a great concept of meditation in action, which I know you're very familiar with. But the way that I've always looked at it, and what I've always read, and I believe from my own practice, is that first thing in the morning is absolutely the best time for a practice, because A, you're the freshest first thing in the morning. B, if you haven't looked at your phone yet, you technically haven't taken on things in the day. C, which I love, is that when you establish this base in the morning, it's like ringing a bell, right? And that bell has a chance to kind of buzz through the day. And then if you take a couple breaths every so often, or you tune back into that quiet space, you're kind of re-ringing the bell. So you have kind of that baseline, like in music, that you're starting in the morning. So I think, as you know, and I know that was a layup that you already knew all this, but I just think that generally that's sort of the main idea, is to try to do this. You can shower, kind of wake yourself up, have something small to eat, but the idea is that before you really start your day and get out into the world, is you establish your quiet space. But again, sometimes kids going to school at 7:30 a.m. and get up at 6 a.m. and they're barely awake at 5:30. It could be tricky, but I would still say, even if you can get 5 minutes in before you start your day, and then maybe the next best time, and I'm curious what you think, would be, maybe after school, when you have kind of that midday point, or if you're a coach, before you take the field, that'd be a great time, or maybe you have some dead time. And the last thing I'll say is, again, if the morning is just so brutal, it's just so hard to fit it in, maybe have a strong intention when you go to bed at night to lay there for a few minutes and really get quiet and really kind of project into the morning, like when I wake up, like a visualization. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to really, even if I just have to walk a little slower to the shower, I'm going to be more present and really try to focus on being more meditative.
Yeah, I have to agree. I feel like the morning, there's such an opportunity to set the tone for the rest of the day, that if, I kind of look at it like, if the day is potentially you're going out to sea, it's like your lighthouse at the beginning of the day. Like you have your center, you have your beacon, that no matter what happens during the day, you can always get back to that peaceful stillness of being present and quiet. So I think for me, that's kind of how I look at it, because days can get so busy that even if I just have 5 minutes, just recognizing that that's always available is so important for my daily practice. But I feel like young people starting this, you're right, like early in the morning, getting ready for school, maybe there's not enough time, but like, even if you're doing it on the ride to school for 5 minutes, just maybe can grab 5 minutes, or you're on the bus. I used to take the bus to school. There's got to be, some point where, you can start small and take a few minutes just to get centered and quiet, because I feel like if you can do that, it's gonna pay dividends during the day. And like Alan said, maybe it's, when you get home from school at the end of the day, I think if you're playing sports, it would be great if you could take some time to transition from school before practice starts, to center yourself and kind of let go of all the stuff that happened at school, and get yourself prepared to go to practice or play a game. I think that's great. And also what Alan said, at night, I do a gratitude meditation every night. And I feel like it just is such a great set point to get myself back to, all of the things that I'm grateful for during the day. It's just a really good way to kind of drift off to sleep every evening. So, that's kind of my own practice. And I know Alan had some great suggestions there. So hopefully, that was helpful. And you can meditate anywhere. Like I know there's like this stigma of, it's got to be a perfectly quiet place, and you got to be, sitting in some lotus pose, and, you got to have, the reality is, the better you get at being able to be present in any moment is kind of what Alan was saying, like this concept of living a meditative life. Like it's always available. So don't feel like you have to be in a certain spot to be able to do it. And in fact, what we want is, we want you to be able to go to that place whenever you need to get there. So you should, I show people all the time, like I keep this little silly band on my wrist, and when I notice it during the day, which happens all the time, I usually catch myself and do some conscious breaths. And that's just my way of constantly reminding myself that there's an opportunity, anytime during the day, to just take 30 seconds or a minute and get reconnected to that neutral space where, everything comes from.
As you said, Jason, it's practice, meaning it's the meditation practice where you're really trying to segment time and like kind of get in there and really establish some good mojo. But it's a connector. I use the term continuum a lot too, where it's happening all the time. It's almost like if you said in a 24-hour period, I mean, maybe not including sleep, but we could really include sleep too, that, well, we'll say in your conscious awake time, let's use this basic number of 16 hours a day. It's sort of like a fulcrum, right? It's like, of those 16 hours, how many of those hours are you really spending sort of with this quietness in the background where you're kind of flowing through the day? How much of the time are you really worrying about the future or past and caught up in thoughts about whatever? And it's sort of, you become what you practice, right? So it's like all of a sudden you start noticing I'm taking breaths more often throughout the day, like you said. I'm noticing that if someone cuts me off, I'm noticing that I'm stopping faster and not buying into the drama. And it's like, not that you can't get something off your chest, but you're basically saying, I just want to get back to my breathing. I just want to get back to being quiet. Like, we probably don't have time to get into it, but it's sort of what we both build with our people we work with, their process, right? It's like, I tell people all the time, the more you're in your process, like for breathing, presence, now, the more that those are like your defaults, the more it's just natural, as you said, it's normal. So that now when you go out and play in a game that night, it's not really a game anymore in your mind. It's more like you get to keep present with your process. You get to keep flowing with your breath because it's very familiar. It's part of you. It's that changing of the default, if you will. And so I just want to reiterate exactly what you said, that this is really a way of life. And it's, I know it sounds sort of funny, but I've noticed for the last at least 6 months or so that even on Zoom calls, podcasts, whatever, conversations, teaching, I feel way more like I'm meditating now than ever. I feel like even right now, yeah, I'm totally aware, like I'm talking, and we're doing this, but there's another part of me that I'm really trying to just be spacious. I'm trying to be, because for me, the word spaciousness is freedom, right? So early, somebody else, the word freedom might be freedom, right? Or breathing might relax them. But for me, spaciousness does pretty much all of it. It's relaxing, it's quieting, it's comforting, it's supportive, but it's aware, it's present, it's fluid, it's intuitive, it's instinctive. So like to me, I just want to be spacious because I feel like it's just allowing everything to come out naturally without anything quote unquote in the way. So anyway, that was a little side tangent on living the meditation.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great segue, right? So if we were to talk about why, which I think we did a pretty good job, and how, and hopefully convince some people to give it a try.
Please.
Yeah. So then the next thing would be, how do people use this mindset or this skill in training? And then I think we'll follow up with, and how do they use it during the game? And so why don't we start with, again, the process? Like, you talk about the athletes that we're fortunate enough to get to work with. How do we develop these processes? Where is the mindfulness or meditation component in the process? And then let's finish with how do they use it during a game, and then we'll open it up for some questions, hopefully.
Yeah, I would say it starts again with the practice. Like anything in life, the practice is the foundation. The practice is the base. So by them having the practice in place, now they have a chance to go out into, whether it's practice, a game, life, as you said earlier, right? There's a point of reference, right? I use the term baseline. There's the baseline there. So I first try to convince anybody I ever work with, and I never try to guilt them into it, but I just say, look, this is like 90% of the game with me. Yeah, I can talk all day long about the process. I love it. And it is very vital, as you know, to the overall scope of things. But it's like the foundation of the house. If it's not there, it's the engine of the car. I feel like we're kidding ourselves. So that's how I look at it. So I'm going to go back to the practice, the meditation, the mental training as being the priority. And then once that base is in place, then as you said, step 2 is, well, how do you bring that out into the world? And probably answering your second question now is just, we build a process with each athlete. I want them to know what their process is. Everybody usually has a very sports specific point in the game. A pitcher has to pitch, a hitter has to hit, golfers have to putt really well, and they have to have their swing down. So everybody, basketball players need to shoot well. I mean, we can talk about defense and other things, but so I always attack the main areas that they have to be great at to excel in their sport. And so we first build a process for a pitcher. As a very simple example, mine would be breathe for millions of reasons, right? Focal point, where's my intention? That's my focal point. And then attack, my focal point. So those are my 3 mantras on the mound. That's my process. As a hitter, breathe, see the ball well, hit it hard. Golfing is breathe, keep my head down, finish to my target. I actually have a fourth one, which is I want fluidity in my swing. But it's essentially, but you can see I'm dwindling this down to a few key components. Now, someone might say to me, well, what about on defense? I'm having an issue with this. Or what about here? I would build their process there. If you're in class and you're not listening very well to the professor, well, breathe, be present, and be open, and be interested, right? I mean, we can make up a few basics to the process, but that is sort of how I piecemeal it with the people I work with. And then, as you know, at some point, the idea is that becomes their default to where now they can just ride the bike. First you have to pedal and steer the bike and balance, and you have to first learn some techniques, which is the process. But at some point, without getting too deep, as you know, is you have to sort of transcend the process and then trust it and let it do its thing. So that would be to me how I would apply it out into the world.
Yeah, I really like that. One of the things that you said was when you're in your head, you're time traveling, right? You're either in the past or the future. And one of the things that I find and work with all my athletes on, very similar to what you just said, is, if there's dialogue going on in your head, that's your first cue that you're domed, right? You're in your head rather than connected to the outside world and the environment. And I feel like the more people meditate and the more they develop this mindfulness skill, the easier and quicker they realize when they're internally focused and they're in their head time traveling. And to me, like it's so simple once it's defined, because if they're hearing words, and a lot of times the words are based in judgment, or it's like the laundry list of the things that they should be working, right? Like all those things that are going on when you're playing the game and you're being athletic, none of those things are happening. And what Alan and I are trying to convince you of is, like, that's possible every time you play the game. But the way you get there is by having a meditation mindfulness practice. That's the only way you get there. There's not another way for you to short circuit that process at all. Like your mind, until you develop the skill to realize the difference between when you're in your head and when you're not in your head, you're just going to assume the natural state is always being in your head. Because most people that don't have a meditation mindfulness practice never are still. They never experience that moment when Alan finished that 4 or 5 minute meditation where there was just stillness and quiet. Like, that does not happen during their day at all. And so when that does not happen during your day at all, there's no way for you to know that that's the way it's supposed to be when you're playing the game.
It's an amazing paradox, right? You reminded me of something that I always tell athletes up front too. I tell it to anybody that's willing to listen. I tell this to people, friends. If you knew ahead of time, which is a piggyback on what you just said, which I thought was really important. If you knew ahead of time that the zone, which is basically the quietness that we're talking about, right? The freedom. If you knew ahead of time, the zone is always happening. It's just a question of, are you thinking about something that's taking you out of it? But I'm going to add a piece to that now because of what you just said. If you don't know what you don't know, if you don't know that being in your mind and your thoughts, time traveling, as you said, like if you don't know that that's what's keeping you out of this freedom to begin with, then it's just flipping coins, like you're trying to figure out who's showing up. Now, you could theoretically be fortunate and just, abandon those thoughts and just say, I have to just go throw the ball now. But we both know that, and this is a word I have noticed has been kind of coming up with me a ton, awareness. Like, if you don't have the awareness to know the difference, B, why is meditation so valuable on top of millions of things? Because you're being quiet, you're stepping back, as you said, from the busy day, from the stuff that's always going on, and you're giving yourself contrast to say, who is this other part of me that's always there, by the way, this quiet, still, free, peaceful place, natural, but I'm actually intentionally making time to tune into that part. And oh, by the way, because I'm tuning into that part, I'm now becoming even more aware of the other part that I wasn't aware of, as you said, that is the distracting part and the time traveler. And so now you're getting like the best of both worlds. You're bringing an awareness to where you want to be, but you're now, as you said earlier, you're also hyper aware of when you leave it. And boy, we both know, if you just start out knowing that, just knowing the players in the game, so to speak, it's a life changer. And I think that's why you and I keep saying on this call, and to people that we work with and talk to, like, please give this a chance, because until you have this contrast, it is just, unless you're born again, born in the zone and live in the zone and are the zone, and it doesn't mean that some people in the world that's just not their default, but we both know that if you're in this world and you are a byproduct of all these messages and technology going on, and that is what you think is your quote unquote normal, we're both trying to say, no, there's this other place that's always available and always there. And please give this a try, because no one's going to ever have to tell you again to do it, because that's why you and I both meditate a lot, because we both have lived it to the point where we want to live from this place, because the benefits are countless. It just feels amazing, and it helps us be effective and efficient at whatever we do in life. And we know the counter side of it is, if we miss our meditation, it doesn't mean we can't go out in the world and still kind of wing it and have some tools, but we both know we're selling ourselves short. That just doesn't feel good, because we both know why. So anyway, sorry for that long tangent, but I just wanted to kind of circle back to a couple of things you said.
Oh, I appreciate that. So why don't we open it up for questions? I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but if Cole, if you're on, there were some questions that we need to answer. Why don't we do that with the last 7 or 8 minutes? I mean, I feel like Alan and I could talk about this all night long. So I guess it's good and bad, but
no, it's good.
Not a problem. We do have a couple questions here.
Go ahead.
One coming in from Ryan Altman. Is there such thing as an ideal length of time to spend in meditation, or will that just vary by person and purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I've just read some research on that, right? So I know that, they initially they said something like 13 minutes or something, but I just read a study recently that they said that I mean, as little as 7 minutes a day, you're getting significant benefit of just being still for 7 minutes. And like I said at the beginning of the call, like, start small. Like, I mean, I know, like, I trust me from experience, like 7 minutes of being still isn't going to be easy, like right out of the gate. So, for some of you it might be, but like, it wasn't easy for me, right? I had a really busy mind when I started down this path. So, if you could just do a minute tomorrow, celebrate a minute, and, do a minute for a week. I'm being serious, right? Do a minute for a week. And then, next week, try 2 minutes. But when you do a minute, like, really, like, it is a positive thing. And if you're trying to create a behavior, it's really important that you celebrate, your tiny accomplishment. So I would suggest just start as small as you can. Like, even if you just can do 30 seconds, like, literally, just focus on your breath for 30 seconds. I would rather you start so small and celebrate that and begin a practice than try to sit down and do 10 minutes straight out of the gate. Alan, what do you think?
Loved everything you said. I would just add that, as you would, continuity is king. And so whether it's 1 minute or 4 or 24, just please do it daily. So if you do that 30 seconds or a minute for the first week, just do your best to not miss a day, because it is so imperative that you're letting your deeper being know that, hey, I'm coming. This like, I'm here, I'm aware, and you're making that effort. And then secondly, I'd say that I think for me, the sweet spot to build up to, of course, and as Jason said, this is something that really takes practice and some patience. But I think in a perfect world, it's sort of why a lot of people talk about 20 minutes being the right amount of sleep if they take a nap. I don't know the science behind it. I know you would know more about that, but I feel like 20 minutes seems like it's probably a sweet spot. But look, that's also maybe based on 30 years ago, where nowadays with all the stuff going on, as you said, 7 minutes for starters might be like really, really powerful. But I keep coming back to this idea of just, if you're going to give this a try, and we sure hope you do, just commit to a week and just say, you know what, this week, no matter what, I'm going to do it for a minute, but I'm going to do it every day.
Yeah, great. Cole, anything else?
Yes, we have a question from Campbell Lee. How important is posture during meditation? Is there a best position to be in, whether it's sitting, lying down, or anything else?
Go ahead, Alan. Take this one.
I can do this in about 20 seconds. A great line I heard a long time ago is, the more erect your spine is, the more alert your mind is. So I would say that some form of sitting will tend to be better to at least keep you alert, but that doesn't mean a reclining chair where you're kind of leaning back, chilling out is not great. You don't have to do anything formally posture-wise, you can. But the last thing I'd say is this, comfortable, relax, if you're laying down, I've had some of my best meditations in my life laying down, maybe after a yoga session or something. But for me, I sit. Sitting does make a difference. But for anybody starting out, back to what we said earlier, it's more about the continuity. It's more about the doing it. And I'd say the key is just find a position that's comfortable.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Cole, anything else?
Yeah, we have one more. And Alan, you kind of touched upon this within the first question that came in. But user wrote, if I fall out of a routine easily, how can I rewire myself to know that if I miss a day, I can bounce back?
You go. I'll go second.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I think it comes back to developing habits and creating new behaviors. And I'm reading a book right now about this, which is great, called Tiny Habits. So, what I would say is the continuity, right? You want to have a cue that's going to remind you to do it daily. So again, my little cue is this band. So whenever I'm out during the day and I notice that band, that's my cue to even just do 3 conscious breaths, right? So having something that's going to remind you daily so that you develop this continuity, so that and it could be like anything, right? It could be, as soon as I finish putting on my shoes in the morning and I tie my shoes, as soon as I finish tying the second shoe, I sit down in the chair and I do my minute meditation. Whatever it is, like, that's going to really help you develop a routine. And once you start, and again, like I said earlier, like, making sure that you celebrate the fact that you do it is critically important, because your brain's going to get that little hit of dopamine. You're going to feel like you accomplished something, and it's going to really help you to create a habit and change that behavior. So having some kind of cue that reminds you to do that thing is gonna really help you get started. And then when you do that thing, make sure that you reward yourself with I did it, some kind of emotional response to, see, I can meditate, I can develop a mindfulness practice. This is my 8th day in a row, right? And it's like, once you start to build up that momentum, then it kind of takes over.
Yeah, you can also, nowadays with smartphones, you can set a timer, an alarm every day at 6:42 a.m. or 3:33 p.m. Set an alarm, put a note up on your front door. But at the end of the day, if you miss a day, be kind to yourself. Don't give yourself too much grief. Just do everything that Jason basically just said. It's just make an effort to make sure that, hey, this is important. And I want to keep going back to this one theme. We both know this from doing this so long. We feel strongly about this, that if you just do it, you're going to be propelled to want to do it. it's just a way of life. Like if you start feeling noticeably better or sleeping noticeably better or seeing the pitches from the pitcher noticeably better or flowing through the day noticeably better, and you know it's because you've been meditating, it just it inspires itself. And so I think that as much as at the beginning it feels like you need to kind of, grind it out a little bit, and maybe sometimes you do a little bit at the beginning, but I think ultimately if you just trust it and just know that it's going to move you, like no one's going to ever have to tell you again, like, hey, we both have friends, I know I can speak on your behalf, that meditate religiously, and if they miss a day or miss a morning, they know it, and they'll explain it, and they'll say something like, man, I missed my meditation this morning, and man, it's a good, and they'll say it's a good reminder, like, wow, what a contrast. And so that's where this becomes just very intrinsic. No one has to tell you anymore you should. It just becomes one of those things that you want to do it because you know the connection of why it's making you feel so much better.
Yeah. Was that all the questions, Cole?
Yep, that's all of them that came in.
Perfect. Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining the call. And as you can see by now, my friend Alan and I are very passionate about everyone who will listen to us developing this mindfulness meditation habit, skill, way to go through life. So hopefully you give it a shot. We both are here. I know we'll do future calls. I know Alan will come back and help us understand this even more in the future. So I appreciate you taking the time, Alan. Thank you so much for carving out some space for the people in the kitchen. And I'll give you the last words. So why don't you take us home here?
My last words are going to point back to you to take us home, and I'll tell you why in a second. Number one, thank you to Rocky, Cole, everybody at Team Mustard, because I know how passionate you guys are. I know how much you care. Shout out Lindsay Barra too, by the way. And I know you just care. Your care level is high, Lindsay. Your care level is off the charts, and you care so much about training, development, mental health, performance in life. And so I'm honored to be on this. As you said, you and I know we could talk for hours. In fact, we could also not talk for hours, which is some irony there too, right? But thank you for having me on. I love doing this, and I hope everybody out there just from hearing this is like, hey, okay, it makes some sense here, and I'm going to give this a try, and that's why we did it. And so my last word is to say to you as a reminder, if you feel like you have a second to do it, is remind everybody about part of the continuum is that wherever they are in life, they can take that one deep breath that you talked about earlier. So I don't know if we have time for that, but that'd be a cool way to end, is for people to have that quick tool as well.
Sure. So there's a podcast I listened to from this professor at Stanford, Andrew Huberman, and he just was talking about this study about the physiological sigh, and we do this all the time anyway, but it's one of those things that we do and we don't even notice we do it. So I guess we do it while we're sleeping or right before we go to sleep, but it's a way to reset your nervous system. And so I'll demonstrate it, which is I'm going to breathe in through my nose as deeply as I can. So I'm going to try to fill my lungs up completely. And then when I'm done breathing in, right when I feel like my lungs are all the way full, I'm going to breathe in again. So I'm going to force more air in, and then I'm going to exhale through my mouth. And what this is going to do for all of you on the call, what it's going to do is it's really going to reset your nervous system, and it's going to get you back into neutral. So you could do this 2 or 3 times. If you're feeling anxious or you're feeling a little bit of anxiety, you can try this, and it's really going to help get you back into a neutral place. So why don't we both do it? So we're gonna deep inhale through our nose, and then breathe in again, and then slowly exhale through our mouth. Enjoy the silence. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate ya. We'll do this again soon. Have a good night. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.